Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My dear students, welcome back to my new lecture. In this lecture, I will talk about hypothalamus and pituitary anatomy, that how hypothalamus and pituitary are connected with each other, how hypothalamus regulate the hormones of pituitary gland, means to say how hypothalamus stimulate the pituitary gland to release or to secrete its hormones. Before going into detail of this topic, let me briefly talk about the development of hypothalamus, that from which region of nervous tissue, embryonic nervous tissue, hypothalamus develop. So actually, when zygote is produced, then in the zygote cleavages occur, which are early mitotic division. Then after some cleavages, regular mitosis start. As a result of that cleavages and mitosis, a lot of identical cells are produced, which are called blastomeres. And these blastomeres then differentiate into various groups. Some group of cells give rise to muscles, and some group of cells give rise to bones, and another group of cells give rise to nervous system. So I will show here that from which region of the nervous tissue, embryonic nervous tissue, hypothalamus developed. Let's suppose this was is a result of cleavages and regular mitosis. A lot of cells are produced. Then we will talk about what is cleavage and mitosis when I will discuss development and aging chapter. So let's suppose these are the early embryonic identical cells, and some of these cells differentiate. Let's suppose these are the cells which differentiate, and they in future will give rise to the nervous tissue. These are differentiated, they will give rise to the muscle, and these will, let's suppose, give rise to the bones, etc. So these cells, after differentiation, they arrange themselves into small vesicle. This is, let's suppose, one vesicle, another vesicle, and here is another vesicle, and here is spinal cord. The upper two vesicles, they are called prosencephalon. I will only write the abbreviation because I do not have very much space. And this region is called mesencephalon, and this region is called rhombencephalon. And as you can see, the prosencephalon also called for brain, and mesencephalon also called midbrain, and rhombencephalon also called hind brain. So you can see the prosencephalon or the forebrain have two subdivisions. This division is called telencephalon, and this one is called diencephalon. And midbrain remain, or the mesencephalon remain the same. And this region, rhombencephalon, have also two divisions. One, the upper one is called metencephalon, and this lower one is called myelencephalon. From these embryonic regions of nervous tissue, various regions of the brain develop. Adult brain consists of different structures, such as cerebral hemisphere, such as amygdala, hippocampus, thalamus, epithalamus, hypothalamus, basal ganglia, cerebellum, etc. So all these regions then develop from these embryonic regions. So hypothalamus is the region, hypothalamus is the structure which developed from diencephalon. So hypothalamus is a diencephalon structure. Now let me show many other structures also produced from diencephalon. So now I will show the adult lateral view of the adult brain. Then I will show where hypothalamus is located and where pituitary is located and how they are connected with each other. So, for example, this is brain. This is the forebrain. All structure which are located here are formed in structure. This is the midbrain, this is the pons, medulla oblongata, and here is the cerebellum. This is the spinal cord. And as you know, the brain and nervous system is encased by or surrounded by cranium. This is the cranium bone. And here are eyes, this one eye, and this is the another eye. And here is, let's suppose, the nose, and here are the lips, and this is the chin, and this is the, here is one opening in the skull bone through which spine cord extend downward. This opening is called foramen magnum. And here, these are the two eyes. From these two eyes, the visual information means what we see. All these information move to the brain through two nerves. One nerve, these two nerves are called optic nerve. This is one nerve and this is another nerve. These are optic nerve. Let me show in front of you. Let's suppose these are my brain, these are my eyes. And our brain consists of two cerebral hemispheres. Collectively the two cerebral hemispheres are called cerebrum. So this one cerebral hemisphere, this another cerebral hemisphere. These are the eyes. From these eyes, the visual information reach to cerebral hemisphere from one eye to one cerebral hemisphere through optic nerve, and from another eye to another cerebral hemisphere through optic nerve. So let's suppose these are the two eyes. This is one eye and this another eye, and these are the optic nerve. These are the fibers of optic nerve. From this eye, the optic nerve carry information to this side cerebral hemisphere, and from this eye, the visual information carried by that optic nerve to that cerebral hemisphere. But some fibers of that optic nerve move toward the opposite side cerebral hemisphere in this direction, and some fibers from this optic nerve from that optic nerve also move into the opposite cerebral hemisphere. So in this way, some fibers of both nerve cross each other. This point where the optic nerves are, where the fibers of both optic nerve cross each other, this region is called optic chiasma. Again, this one eye, this is another eye. This is the optic nerve which carry information, visual information from that eye. That carry information to that side cerebral hemisphere, and that one carry to that side cerebral hemisphere. But some fibers of both nerve also move to the opposite cerebral hemisphere. So in this way, some fibers of both nerve cross each other. This point where fibers of both optic nerve cross each other, this is called optic chiasma. Now, the region of nervous system beyond the optic chiasma, this is hypothalamus. So let me show here with the help of diagram. So let's suppose this is one optic nerve, fibers of one optic nerve, and here are the fibers of another optic nerve. And some fibers of that optic nerve move to these fibers of that optic nerve move to its respective cerebral hemisphere. And these optic nerve also move to its respective cerebral hemisphere. But some optic nerve of optic fiber of this optic nerve move to the opposite side cerebral hemisphere. And same is the case over here. Some fibers of that optic nerve move to the opposite side cerebral hemisphere. So this region where both optic nerve cross each other, this region is called optic chiasma. You can see in the diagram in your book, optic. I will not write the full spelling because of limited space. Optic chiasma. Okay. Now, the region now beyond this optic chiasma is what hypothalamus. So here are the tissues of hypothalamus. This tissue of hypothalamus, it also outgrowth downward. This region of hypothalamus is called median imminence. Actually, this median imminence is the area of hypothalamus where hypothalamic hormones are produced. And this region here is one skull bone which is called sphenoid bone. In this sphenoid bone have a cavity known as sella tarsica. This is the sphenoid bone, and the cavity is called sella tarsica, Turcica. So some tissue of hypothalamus, they extend, and you may say some neurons of hypothalamus extend and they terminate here in that sella tarsica. That region of hypothalamus which is located in sella tarsica of sphenoid bone, this is called posterior pituitary. So this is the posterior pituitary. So in my previous lecture I talked that posterior pituitary is also called neurohypophysis. It is called neurohypophysis because, as you can see, it originates from what? From nervous tissue. That is why it is called. It is also called neurohypophysis. And this is the nose, and in nose we have epithelial cells, which is called nasal epithelium. So this nasal epithelial cells. Okay, let me draw the red. Okay. Some of the nasal epithelial cell, they outgrow from this epithelial region. This outgrowth of nasal epithelium is called Rathke's pouch. This Rathke's pouch finally detached from here, and it come and it attached with the sella tarsica. Let me draw in a separate color. This is the Rathke's pouch, and this Rathke's pouch detached from the nasal epithelium, and it move here and it occupy this area. Okay. This structure is called interior pituitary because it is present at interior side. So this is the interior pituitary. Some cells of the interior pituitary, it occupy this region, the region between interior pituitary and posterior pituitary. This region, these cells which are present between interior pituitary and posterior pituitary, this is called median lobe or intermediate lobe. This whole structure is called pituitary gland, which structure is its size is somewhat about a pea, मटर के दाने के बराबर इसका साइज होता है, और कलर जो है रेड भी होता है, डार्क ग्रे भी होता है. So this whole structure is called pituitary, which consists of three lobes: interior pituitary, posterior pituitary, and intermediate lobe. Posterior pituitary, in my previous lecture I talked that posterior pituitary is also called adenohypophysis. It is called adenohypophysis because this is interior pituitary is also called adenohypophysis. It is called adenohypophysis. The word adeno means gland. Hypophysis means undergrowth. So, as you can see, it is the small undergrowth below the brain. So, therefore, and it is glandular structure. Therefore, it is also called adenohypophysis. Now, this connection, this stalk-like connection, through which hypothalamus and pituitary gland are connected with each other, this stalk-like structure is called this stalk-like structure. This is called infundibulum. Or it may also call pituitary stalk. In fact, this pituitary stalk consists of nerve fibers. As I said, that posterior pituitary consists of some extensions of neuron from hypothalamus. So actually, here are neurons which extend from hypothalamus and they terminate over here. These neurons. And some blood vessel also enter here into the hypothalamus. They give rise to capillaries, and these capillaries join form vein. These veins also pass through this stalk-like structure, and here in the pituitary gland they give rise to capillaries again, and then they unite to form vein again. So this stalk, pituitary stalk, consists of nerve fibers which extend from hypothalamus down to the pituitary gland, and some blood vessel which extend from hypothalamus into the pituitary gland. Now I will draw a separate diagram of that median imminence region and posterior pituitary as well as anterior pituitary and medial lobe of pituitary, and I will also show that how the blood carry hormones from hypothalamus and how these hormones leave the blood capillary and what these hormones do at pituitary level. So let me draw a separate diagram, a large diagram. So let's suppose this is the median imminence of hypothalamus. So this is hypothalamus region, hypothalamus, and here is the sella turcica. Some, as I told you, first I will draw the posterior pituitary, then I will draw the anterior pituitary. Some neurons from hypothalamus, each neuron consists of cell body. The typical neuron consists of cell body. Let me draw a large cell body. Cell body is the region of neuron where its nucleus is present, and from that cell body extend process, tube-like process, which is called axon. So these are the axons which extend from hypothalamus to the pituitary gland, and this is one type of neuron, this is another neuron, and here are this cell body, and here are other types of neuron. These are at cell body, and this is the process which extend from hypothalamus downward. This process which extend from hypothalamus, it is called axon. So these are the axonal fibers at ends here, and here is another. All this region where these neurons end, this region is called posterior pituitary. So this is what posterior pituitary, which consists of projections of axon from hypothalamus. Now, as I told, that posterior pituitary, it doesn't by itself produce any hormone, it just stored two hormones. One is ADH and another one is oxytocin. So let's suppose these are the neurons which synthesize ADH, and these are the neurons which synthesize oxytocin. You know, both ADH and oxytocin, these are peptide hormone, and peptides are produced as a result of gene expression. Gene express हो जाता है, messenger RNA produce हो जाती है. This messenger RNA from nucleus move into the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm में जो है उससे प्रोटीन बन जाता है, and उस प्रोटीन में further structure modification हो जाता है और एक peptide hormone बन जाता है. So you know that where is the nucleus of these neuron? Nucleus of these neuron is present in hypothalamus. So hence, let's suppose ADH synthesis occurring here. So here is the nucleus. Here are the chromosome, gene is expressed, messenger RNA is produced, messenger RNA move into the cytoplasm, and cytoplasm it transforms into protein, meant to say into ADH hormone. And these ADH hormones then they are stored in vesicle. These vesicle then transport through these tube-like structure of neuron which are called axon, and finally reach here to these terminal button. These the end part of neuron, axon of neuron is called terminal button or axonal endings, because their structure is somewhat like button. Therefore, it is also called terminal button or axonal endings. So here these stored ADH are present, and for example, these are the cells which produce oxytocin, a neuron which produce oxytocin. So again, this is the nucleus, here are the chromosomes, DNA is present, genes are expressed, and messenger RNA is produced, messenger RNA move to the cytoplasm, and here it is a translation occur, proteins are produced, and protein then finally convert into what? Into oxytocin hormone. This oxytocin hormone then stored in the vesicle. These vesicle then transport through these axon, and here they stored. They are present in stored form in the form of vesicle. So I think so now that should be very clear to you that posterior pituitary by itself do not produce any hormone. It just stores two hormones, ADH and oxytocin. So let's suppose this is the stored ADH, and this one is stored oxytocin. And here is the interior lobe, and this is the sella tarsica. This is the interior lobe. In the interior lobe or interior pituitary, it produces and secretes 6 hormones. So there are 6 specific group of cells in the interior pituitary. 5. So as I talked in my previous lecture, that interior pituitary, it produces and secrete which hormone? For example, this TSH. The cell which produce and secrete TSH hormone, those cells are called thyrotroph. Thyrotrophs. What are thyrotrophs? Thyrotrophs are the cells of group of cell of interior pituitary which produce and secrete TSH hormone. So these are the cell which produce TSH hormones. And for example, these are the cells, let's suppose, of interior pituitary which produce growth hormone. And these cells are called somatotrophs. And these are the cells which produce and secrete LH and FSH. Collectively, these LH and FSH producing cells are called gonadotrophs. And these are the cells which produce prolactin. These are called lectotrophs. And these are the cells which produce ACTH. These are called corticotrophs. And here in the hypothalamus now, all these hormones, their production and their secretion is regulated by hormones from hypothalamus. As I talked in my previous lecture, that hypothalamus produce and secrete GnRH hormone. That GnRH hormone through the blood reach to the interior pituitary, and the interior pituitary it stimulates specific cell, and these specific cells then in response secrete LH and FSH hormone. So how these hormones from hypothalamus reach to the interior pituitary? So I will also show the blood supply to the hypothalamus. And so this is, let's suppose, the blood vessel which enter into the hypothalamus. This blood vessel is called superior hypophyseal artery. This superior hypophyseal artery in hypothalamus, it gave rise to a network of capillaries. So let's suppose these are the capillaries. These are called a network of capillaries, may also called here primary plexus. So these capillaries rejoin and form a vein which is called portal, hypophyseal portal vein. This is the hypophyseal portal vein. When this vein reach here to the interior pituitary, it again gave rise to capillaries. Now, for example, here are some hypothalamic cell, and these cells produce GnRH. This GnRH hormone enter into the blood and into the capillary, the blood present in the capillary, GnRH enter into the blood present in these capillaries, and through the hypophyseal portal vein the hormone traveled here, and when it reached to the another plexus of capillaries here which is present in the interior pituitary, the hormone leave these capillaries. And for example, this is GnRH hormone. So this GnRH hormone, it bind only to those cells where its receptors are present. So this GnRH move here and it binds with its own receptor, When it stimulates its own receptor, then in response these cells stimulate and start to produce LH and FSH hormone and then secrete it. So in this way, hypothalamus regulate the secretion of interior pituitary. So for example, here TRH hormone entered. So let's suppose this is the TRH, thyroid releasing hormone. This hormone enter here, and through this hypophyseal portal vein it reach here into the interior pituitary, and here it leaves this blood stream and enter here. And where are the thyrotrop cell? These are the thyrotrop cell. So let's suppose here is also thyroid releasing hormone, and here are its receptors present. So this thyrotrop, this TRH hormone bind with its receptor, stimulate these cell, and these cell in response then produce a TSH hormone, and then it also secreted TSH. So in this way, hypothalamus produce growth hormone releasing hormone, growth hormone inhibitory hormone, and that hormone after its production release, hypothalamus release it, and then it enter into the blood. Through the blood it reach to the interior pituitary, and it stimulates specific cells in the interior pituitary. Those cells then in response produce and secrete that hormone. So this was the anatomical relationship between hypothalamus, this is the sella turcica. So this is the anatomical relationship between hypothalamus, that how they are connected with each other, and how hypothalamus regulate the hormones of interior pituitary and as well as that of posterior pituitary. When ADH and oxytocin are needed, then a message come in the form of nerve impulse to the end of these neurons. So when a nerve impulse reach here, then the vesical membrane and neuronal membrane fuse with each other, exocytosis occur. As a result of exocytosis, the hormone is released, and here also blood capillaries are present. Here is another vessel enter here, particularly to this posterior lobe. This is called inferior hypophyseal artery. Inferior hypophyseal artery gave rise to capillary, and these hormone oxytocin or ADH enter into these to this capillary, and capillary rejoin form vein, and through the vein it reaches to its target site. So this was all about that how hypothalamus and pituitary are connected with each other, They are connected with the help of infundibulum or pituitary stalk, and as you know, infundibulum consists of neuronal fibers and some blood vessel. And one thing more, why this vein is called